Well, good afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, James, for the invitation. It's actually a great pleasure to be able to share my view on the Spanish economy, on the European economy as well today with you. So I'm going to start by, if you allow, by being provocative, and that means being optimistic on what's to come. Being optimistic both on what's to come for the EU, but also for Spain. Somehow I am convinced that this is the moment for the European Union, and this is the moment also for Spain within the European Union. Let me begin with Spain. Actually, when you look at the figures, Spain's performance actually matches today's motto about growth. Our robust performance is actually on the back of a very challenging international context, including deceleration in our main partners. But despite all of that, Spain will be leading growth amongst major advanced economies in 2025 for the second year in a row, nothing less. After upward revisions for our 2025 outlook, it is expected that we will grow around 3% this year, and that in 2026 we will still be leading within main euro area partners, actually doubling the Eurozone growth as well. When you look at what has happened since COVID, not only have we managed to recover from COVID without scars, but actually we've recovered the pre-COVID trend. So it is not only a short-term, but a medium and long-term recovery, basically modernizing our economy on the way, which is a very different situation than the one that we had after the global financial crisis, where we did really have permanent losses of welfare, as you very well know. But let me give you a few hints on why I think that there is sustainability behind this growth model. And actually there is sustainability because basically it is a balanced growth model, which is the key of the overall equation. It is a balanced growth model actually because it is backed by strong job creation first and foremost. Today we had data on Social Security affiliations for the month of October. Again, record data with 21.8 million Social Security affiliates, and when you look at the data seasonally adjusted, which means that we have 500,000 new affiliations on a yearly basis in a recurrent manner since basically the past 2-3 years. This strong job creation has been compatible with an increase in productivity per hour. When you look at productivity per hour between 2018 and 2024, it has grown 3 times more than productivity per hour between 1995 and 2007, or 40% more than the data that we have between 2013 and 2018. So job creation, strong job creation compatible with the increase in productivity per hour, which also comes together with strong external competitiveness. So we are actually having record numbers also in terms of our external balance, surplus larger than 4% of GDP, on the back of not only a strong performance in terms of goods, but also in particular in terms of services. Exports of services in tourism sector, of course, we have record data in terms of tourism, but not only in tourism exports, but essentially in non-tourism services exports. So Spain is actually having record figures, 110 billion euros in exports of non-tourism services, which is bigger than the tourism services exports, which are around 100 billion. So higher value-added services is another key indicator of the modernization of our economy. Amongst those services, of course, financial services, as you well know. Another key element in our balanced growth model, Spain is being a hub for FDI. Between, again, 2018 and 2024, when you look at foreign direct investment, you have the Financial Times database, which actually is a good one to be able to compare across countries. And you look at greenfield investment, so new productive investment. Spain was country number 5 in the world in terms of new greenfield projects. You look at where those projects were actually coming in terms of sectors. We are number 2 in terms of renewable energy greenfield projects, and number 4 when it comes to digitalization or AI implementation as well. So again, another key indicator of how balanced this growth model is and how future-oriented it is as well. The fifth element concerning the balanced nature of our growth model is, of course, fiscal responsibility. That's somehow the way to square the circle We've been able to reduce our debt to GDP ratio since its peak in 2021, of course, as a response to the COVID crisis, by more than 23 percentage points. We expect to end our term in government with debt below 100% of GDP. So basically, up to now, what we've done is to recover pretty much all the fiscal space that we used to respond to COVID and the subsequent crises, including the inflation crisis. So overall, balanced growth model, so we know how we're growing, but also an important or a key message in our growth model is that we're growing with a specific purpose. When we talk in Spain about how to translate these good macro figures to the micro day-to-day lives of our citizens, we are growing with the purpose of reducing inequality, with the purpose of keeping social cohesion in our country. So social cohesion is the key to ensure sustainability also going forward, to ensure ownership from our citizens and avoid the fracture of the social contract. Let me give you a few indicators on how we are managing to translate those macro figures into the micro numbers. Real per capita household disposable income. You look at OECD figures since the beginning of the inflation shock in 2022. Spain growth by 7.9%, above the US and above our main Euro area partners. Unemployment rate down since 2018 from 15% to 10.4%. Youth unemployment rate down by 10 percentage points also, from 35% to 25%. Still high, but huge improvement in the past 6 years. And just to give you another figure, which also talks about a different model in terms of the labor market, we have a similar unemployment rate than the one that we had in 2004. But when you look at our youngsters, our young labor force, the dropout rate in 2004 was 33%. Today, it is 12%. So again, indicators showing how structurally the Spanish economy is way different than what it was before. Number of households with every working age adult employed, plus 1.7 million since 2018. With every working age adult unemployed, minus 300,000 families or households, below 800,000 today, minimum, historical minimum. You look at poverty, the number of people at risk of poverty in minimum levels since the beginning of this indicator, actually 2014. Of course, we're still not where we would like to be. This is not the end. The progress has been significant, but we're not without challenges going forward. So again, to be able to live up to those challenges, we need to keep growth. We need to keep this growth momentum. And there are two key levers for growth going forward. Of course, productivity, which is related to investment, and is again related to competitiveness as well. We have to be able, in sum, to climb up the ladder of low wages, low productivity loop, which has been somehow the big drag of the Spanish economy for the past decades, getting into higher wages, higher productivity, higher skills, and therefore a higher competitiveness loop in which we will all benefit, of course. So how are we going to face those challenges? Let me just give you a flavor of some of the policies that we are moving forward, both at the domestic but also at the European level. At the domestic level, we're working intensively on a simplification agenda, reduction of administrative barriers for our firms, particularly when we look at SMEs. When I think of the red tape, of the administrative burden for our companies, the way that I picture it is it's a bit simplistic, but it's a big iceberg. What we want is our companies to be able to deal with this load through simplification, through digital tools as well, so that we can keep them afloat, and they just have to deal with the minimum slice of those charges, while everything else, the big chunk, the lion's share, will be dealt with. So this is the effort that we're taking together with the regional authorities, with also local municipalities, with what we call the Regime 20, which is nothing else than the implementation to Spain of the Regime 28 that was put forward by Enrico Letta for the European Union, with, of course, already thinking about potential extensions to our nearest neighbor, in this case, our Portuguese friends, to be able to have a truly integrated Iberian market. Second element in which we work in, digitalization and innovation. It's not that well known, but over the past few years, Spain has become a key innovator in terms of the development of our ecosystem. So we have produced 8,000 startups, and we are the third market in terms of increase in valuation of our startups or our innovation ecosystem for the past few years within the EU. So again, this innovation is happening in sectors which are future-oriented, key strategic sectors, deep tech, quantum, of course, aerospace, and others, just you name it. Third element, the financing. We need to keep on putting on the table financing for growth for our companies. On this, there are many specific examples. Maybe just to name one would be the new direct financing instrument from our National Promotional Bank, from ICO, which is a great complement to the existing financing from financial institutions and available tools from capital markets as well, and which is having actually a very large demand, not only from bigger companies, but basically from SMEs. Fourth element in which we work in to be able to reduce the mismatch in terms of skills between supply and demand. We know that we still have a two-digit unemployment rate, 25 in the case of our young population. We need to keep on making progress in reducing that unemployment, but at the same time, of course, we need to orient that the skills of that unemployed labor force towards what is required by a modernizing productive sector or productive tissue. So we need to keep on working, as we've been doing, with dual vocational training, which is actually bridging that gap and making it easier for firms to actually hire workers which have the required skills to be able to fulfill, as I said before, their increase or their upscaling in terms of value added and productivity. Internationalization of our companies. We need to, of course, help them get the proper scale, and in a particularly difficult context where we have, of course, the comeback of fragmentation in global trade. And on that, we're working with them hand to hand, being able to actually provide for specialized services for our firms to help them navigate through this new context, this new international context, including, of course, one of the main markets for our firms, which is the US market. And last, of course, efforts which are associated to helping, in this case, workers to have easier access, or the general population, easier access to affordable housing through all the measures that are necessary, of course, regulation, fast tracking for construction permitting, and the rebuilding of housing supply, particularly public housing supply. Aside from, of course, the social toll that the unaffordable housing can have for our families, for our population, there is also a potential impact on labor mobility and therefore on growth going forward as well. EU side. On the EU side, let me just mention two big efforts. So the first one is, of course, trying to unlock integration efforts with, in this case, the creation of the Competitiveness Lab. This is a Spanish initiative where we're working together with other partners, other EU member states, to be able to create a testing ground, a sandbox, where we can actually, with the sort of coalition of the willing approach, which has also been called by Professor Draghi, it was practical fragmentation, practical integration, or I can't remember exactly the name, but this coalition of the willing approach is the way forward, in that it actually puts together efforts from member states on a voluntary basis to be able to scale up small projects which are geared towards these integration efforts, subsequently having other member states join in. So we want to get away from the fear of not integrating enough to the fear of missing out on good and effective integration processes. Specific examples on this coalition of the willing approach. One of them would be the one that we developed a few months ago with 7 European partners, the Finance Europe label, where we want to redirect savings from European citizens to actual European investment projects. Another one in which we work in today with the Bank of Spain as well, which is the creation of a European securitization platform, again, with the aim of expanding the financing options for our companies. The third one, which I can mention, is a project to harmonize SME ratings across Europe that can actually also provide better, easier, faster, cheaper access to our SMEs to financing throughout the whole continent. Second way in which we work at the European level. We're pushing, of course, for every possible way for our companies to be able to gain scale. Not only throughout the work around the single market, with this 2028 date as a big, important endpoint, as Enrico Letta signaled, but also essentially throughout the creation of a network of strategic partners. And in this, of course, hopefully the ratification of Mercosur in the next few weeks will be a good landmark, which will provide for a great example on how the European Union, together in this case with Mercosur, can create a larger market from which our companies can benefit, not only in terms of increasing their exports, but we can all benefit in terms of reducing our dependencies in key areas as well. And I'm just about to close, but I wanted to do it again, going back to my message of optimism. Optimism on Spain, in the sense that we've laid the foundations of a balanced, of course, modernized growth model, and we will keep on continuing on our ongoing efforts to be able to maintain this strong growth momentum. And optimism also on the side of the EU. Things are moving. Actually, we need to keep the urgency mode to seize the opportunity. That's the key element from the European side. We have to do it so actually keeping European values, which is an important element that we should not forget about. European values such as the defense of our welfare state, or also the green lever that has to be one of the key components of growth going forward. Ultimately, Europe will be what we Europeans want it to be. Thank you very much.